Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from Rao's IAS Study Circle. Now we are also available on Telegram, so join our Telegram channel by clicking on the link that is available in the description below to get the latest updates from Rao's IAS Study Circle. Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an analysis of the Hindu newspaper from UPSC perspective. Today we will take up the Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 29 July 2021, and the articles that we will discuss today are displayed on your screen. Now, in our weekly series of answer writing practice from the Daily News Simplified videos, we have created this question for this week. It reads, with the increasing activity in outer space by both state and non-state entities, it is imperative to consider the various treaties that deal with outer space. Analyze. You have to write this answer in 250 words, and this is worth 15 marks. So you can post your answers in the comment box below and get them evaluated by posting the answers before Saturday. So do attempt this question and start your answer writing practice if you have not started till now. Now this article on page number 1 is related to the visit of Secretary of State of United States of America to India. In this line, he has been holding various conversations with different dignitaries like the External Affairs Minister of India. He also called upon the Indian Prime Minister, etc., and discussed the various common issues that concern India and United States of America in the wake of the strategic partnership that has been developing between India and United States of America recently. And this strategic partnership is visible in the way India and US have been collaborating in the quadrilateral security dialogue in the Indo-Pacific. They have been collaborating on climate change, they have been collaborating on the issue on Afghanistan, and also on various other concerns that affect the interest of both these countries. So let us look at the statement that has been given out by the Minister of External Affairs of India regarding the meet that happened between India and US, and also what are the areas of cooperation and common concerns for both India and the United States of America. And accordingly, we will look at how these issues have been covered previously in the Daily News Simplified videos. Now, the statements that are given out by the Minister of External Affairs are very generic in nature. For example, both India and United States of America need to understand that Afghanistan is crucial to the regional security. Again, there will be a generic statement like India and US have been collaborating in the Indo-Pacific region for bringing a rule-based order in the Indo-Pacific region. However, for us from exam point of view, we need to analyze these issues on a deeper level and have understanding of different viewpoints on particular issues. And accordingly, we will look in this discussion about the statements that have been given out by the Ministry of External Affairs, and also how various issues associated with these issues have been covered in the previous DNS videos. Now, the first and the foremost statement that was given out by Ministry of External Affairs after the meeting with the Secretary of the State of United States of America was related to the issue of Afghanistan. We all know that the US troops are now withdrawing from Afghanistan, and also the NATO forces are withdrawing from Afghanistan. And accordingly, this brings Afghanistan on the verge of crisis because of the increasing influence of Taliban in this particular region. So in this line, the MEA has said that in Afghanistan, it is essential that the peace negotiations are taken seriously by all the parties. Secondly, the world wishes to see an independent, sovereign, democratic and stable Afghanistan at peace with itself and with its neighbors. So this clearly highlights that India is concerned about safety and security and stability in Afghanistan, and also peace in Afghanistan, which is crucial for itself and its neighbors because it directly and indirectly impacts the security of India on the Western Front. And further, India has highlighted that the independence and sovereignty of Afghanistan will only be ensured if it is free from malign influences. So this is an indirect reference to Pakistan and China, because we note that Pakistan has had good relations with Taliban, and that is one of the cause of concern for India because this can increase the problem of terrorism on India's Western Front. Thirdly, the statement says that similarly, unilateral imposition of will by any party will obviously not be democratic and can never lead to stability, or indeed can such efforts ever acquire legitimacy. So this was an indirect reference to Taliban because we note that Taliban has been trying to take over control over Afghanistan unilaterally. So in this regard, India says that such unilateral imposition of any party is not democratic in nature, and this can never lead to stability, and such efforts will never acquire legitimacy. We have also seen in previous DNS videos that Taliban wants legitimacy in the Afghanistan by pursuing relations with various neighboring countries. For example, Taliban is improving its relations with Pakistan, which already had relations with Taliban, and also Talibani representative recently met the China to gain some legitimacy in governing Afghanistan. In this regard, one of the concerns regarding Taliban takeover in Afghanistan is regarding the civil rights in Afghanistan. So, in this regard, the Ministry of External Affairs has said that the gains to the Afghan civil society, especially on rights of women, minorities, and on social freedoms over the last 2 decades, are self evident, and we must collectively work to preserve them. And this is because all these rights of women, the rights of minorities, and social freedoms will be under threat if Taliban takes control of Afghanistan's society, because Taliban represents the orthodox Islamic sect that is trying to rule Afghanistan. And last but not the least, one of the important concerns for India is terrorism, which is likely to gain boost because of Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan. So India has said that Afghanistan must neither be home to terrorism nor resource of refugees. This is because if Taliban takes over Afghanistan, there will be a huge refugee crisis because of people moving out from the Taliban's regime into the neighboring countries. And some of the neighboring countries of Afghanistan are the Central Asian countries, Iran, Pakistan, and also this can spiral into various other parts of the world as well. So these are some of the concerns that India has highlighted, and these were the issues that were talked about between India and United States of America at the Secretary of State and the Ministry of External Affairs' talks. Now, the Afghan issue has continuously been in news in the past, and accordingly, there have been various debates regarding the Afghan issue, especially in the wake of the US withdrawal from Afghanistan and also the Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan. So, in this regard, let us look at the way in which the issue of Afghanistan and the various associated debates have been covered in the previous DNS videos, so that you can go to these videos and revise from these videos the issues associated with Afghanistan from the mains examination as well as prelims examination perspective. So in yesterday's DNS video, that is 28th July 2021, we have seen the importance of Central Asia as far as the Afghan issue is concerned. In this regard, United States of America has started another quad group in the Central Asia, which includes Uzbekistan, United States of America, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, with the view of improving connectivity in the region between the Central Asian countries and the South Asian countries. And we have also looked at the key role that Central Asia can play in the Afghan issue and what opportunities this brings for India as well. So you can go through this DNS video to understand the importance of Central Asia as far as the issue of Afghanistan is concerned. Further, in another DNS video that was there on 27 July 2021, various issues and options that are there for India have been discussed in Afghanistan. And associated with it, we have also discussed the various challenges that India faces as far as the Afghan issue is concerned. So for that, you can go to the DNS of 27 July 2021. Then in the DNS of 22nd July 2021, we have discussed about another important debate related to the Afghan issue. In this regard, we all know that India has been indirectly engaging with Taliban till now. So should India engage with Taliban directly, or should it continue the policy of engaging with Taliban indirectly? For understanding the debate, go to the DNS of 22nd July 2021. Again, as we have highlighted that yesterday's DNS covered the Central Asia and its importance for the Afghan issue. And this particular issue started when the contact group on Afghanistan of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's foreign ministers talked about the Afghan issue clearly in the last month. And accordingly, this particular aspect was covered on 19 July 2021. Then on 7 July 2021, when the US forces left the Afghan air base of Bagram without notice, this became a big news. And accordingly, the various aspects of the Afghan issue, how the invasion of United States of America started, what does Pakistan want from this Afghanistan issue, and also what are the likely scenarios after the US withdrawal were also discussed in the DNS of 7 July 2021. And in the DNS of 4th July 2021, when the date of the US withdrawal from Afghanistan was coming close, an article appeared in the newspaper which talked about what lies ahead for Afghanistan after the US exit. And accordingly, various aspects were covered in the DNS of 4th July 2021. So here we have seen that there are different aspects to one particular issue that keep on appearing in the newspapers regularly. And as such, they are covered in different aspects and from different point of views in the Daily News Simplified. So today, as we have very limited news in the newspaper, this brings you with an opportunity to revise all these issues that have been covered previously in the DNS videos. Another issue of discussion between the Ministry of External Affairs and the Secretary of the State of United States of America was the Indo-Pacific region. Again, we note that Indo-Pacific is important for India and US collaboration because both are collaborating in the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, which is aimed at countering Chinese influence in the Indo-Pacific region. However, both India and United States of America do not clearly say that they are against China in this region. So, Ministry of External Affairs has said that Indo-Pacific presents a different set of challenges to stability, growth, and prosperity. And under the aegis of Quad framework, India and US are engaged on maritime security, counterterrorism, connectivity and infrastructure, cyber digital concerns, COVID-19 response, climate change, education, resilient and reliable supply chains. And we note that these are some of the areas of cooperation amongst the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue countries. Again, both these countries have said that they are focusing on importance of observing international law, rules and norms including the UN clause. And this particular statement has been made out in the context of the conflict that is going on in the South China Sea and the high-handedness of China in the handling of South China Sea issue. In this regard, one of the important issues that appeared in the newspapers on 12 July 2021 was regarding other Western countries that are looking towards Indo-Pacific now because of engagement of US and India in the form of Quadrilateral Security Dialogue. So accordingly, we have looked at the issue of why the Western powers are interested in the engagement in Indo-Pacific region. So you can go through this DNS and understand different aspects related to the issue. Further, in the DNS of 21st June 2021, we have learned about the issue of India coming closer to the United States of America because of the engagement in the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue and how this engagement of India with US is transforming India-Russia relations. So this again is one important aspect for us from the mains examination perspective, and you can go through this issue in the DNS of 21st June 2021. Then in the DNS of 20th March 2021, when there was a meeting between United States of America and China in Alaska, an important article appeared in the newspaper which was related to two important global events that were taking place and that were crucial for the geopolitics. First was the Quadrilateral Summit and second was the US and Chinese officials that met in Alaska. And accordingly, in this discussion, we looked at the repercussions of both these for India. So again, this is an important article and you can go to the DNS of 20th March 2021 in this regard. So this is especially an announcement for beginners who can go through the background issues and how things have been going on for past 6 months or so. Then another statement by the Ministry of External Affairs was related to the Middle East and the Gulf region. In this regard, India has said that developments in India's extended neighborhood are also naturally of great consequence to us. Stability in the Gulf, where our political, economic and community interests are so visible, was a shared concern between India and the United States of America at the Secretary of the State and the MEA level talks. Now this was in particular reference to the Iran nuclear deal and the issue that is happening in the Middle Eastern region. In this regard, we have discussed about the Iran nuclear deal and the various associated issues on the 2nd May 2021 DNS. Further, Myanmar is one of the important areas in India's neighborhood and we note that it has recently witnessed a military coup. Accordingly, on the issue of Myanmar, the Minister of External Affairs has conveyed the commitment of India to its democratic transition as well as the support to ASEAN initiatives. We all know that Myanmar is a part of ASEAN grouping. In this regard, in the DNS of 12th June 2021, we have discussed about the various issues associated with the coup that has happened in Myanmar. And also we have discussed about the India-Myanmar relations and how India-Myanmar relations are going to be impacted because of the military coup that has happened in Myanmar. So for looking at the various aspects of India-Myanmar relations, you can go through this DNS video which is related to Myanmar violence that has followed after the military coup that has happened in the Myanmar. Then we all know that India has become the non-permanent member of United Nations Security Council. In this regard, United States of America is the permanent member of UN Security Council. And both India and the US are currently the members of UNSC, and some of the agenda before UNSC were also discussed in the discussions between the MEA as well as the US Secretary of the State, and they talked about the approach to reform multilateralism which is seen as being under threat in the recent times. Again, both these nations talked about countering terrorism, which has been a common endeavor for India and US in the UN framework. Now, regarding India's non-permanent membership at the UN Security Council, there was an article in the Hindu newspaper that talked about pursuing the national interests at the UN High Table. And in this regard, in the DNS of 27 January 2021, so in this regard, we have looked at the background as to what was the international scenario during India's membership of the UNSC, what is India's vision as a non-permanent member, and how should India use this opportunity to pursue its national interests. So we have seen all these aspects in this particular DNS. And finally, both the nations, India and US, talked about the climate partnership between the countries. And in this line, in April month, India had signed a US-India Climate and Clean Energy Agenda 2030 partnership. And both the US and India have set ambitious targets for climate change and clean energy. In this regard, the United States of America has set a very ambitious agenda for itself and has set an economy-wide target of reducing its net greenhouse gas emissions by 50 to 52% below the 2005 levels in 2030. Further, regarding India, as a part of the climate mitigation efforts, India has set a target of installing 450 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030. So these are some of the common areas of convergence and collaboration and concerns between India and United States of America that were talked at in the Secretary of the State and the Ministry of External Affairs talks. And we have seen in this discussion as to how different aspects related to the areas of concerns between India and US have been discussed in the previous DNS videos. So as in today's newspaper, there is limited news that is important for us from the exam perspective. It gives you an opportunity to revise all the issues that you have covered in the previous DNS videos related to the things that we have discussed.
Now the next article to be discussed appears on page number 8. It says, Prime Minister to roll out Academic Credit Bank. And this will be done on the first anniversary of the National Education Policy of 2020. It says that the centre will announce certain initiatives promised in the National Education Policy. So in this particular news analysis, let us understand about this concept of Academic Bank of Credit. Now first of all, let us understand how our present system works. So this present system is more like the piped project, wherein any student enters into a particular stream, for example, BTech, BBA or any degree course. And at the end of the 3 years or 4 years as stipulated for the particular degree, the students come out after pursuing these courses for 3 years or 4 years and earn their degree. So basically the students do not have any flexibility to choose any other program if they so want or if they are dissatisfied in the course of their study. So primarily this particular concept allows for flexibility to the students. And how will the student get these flexibility? By earning credit points. So this particular bank will act as a repository of credits earned by the students. And this credit will be based on the courses or the hours of courses which they have studied. So every student will be allowed to open their accounts in this bank, which will be known as the Academic Bank of Credit. And based on their accounts and based on their studies pursued, they will earn credit points while they are studying different courses. So based on their progress in their studies, slowly the students will start earning these credit points, which will be then stored in this particular bank. And overall, accumulation of certain credits will help the student to earn their degree. Now I have mentioned about the aspect of flexibility. So this new concept highlighted in the National Education Policy allows for flexibility to the students so that the students need not have a piped approach where they are entering into a particular course and only exiting or not exiting with a degree. Now this concept of credit-based study shall be applied as per the guidelines of UGC to the top 100 institutions as per the National Institutional Ranking Framework, that is NIRF, or those institutions or universities or colleges which have earned a grade A accreditation by NAAC, that is National Assessment and Accreditation Council. So as of now, these are the two kind of institutions in which this concept of credit-based system will start from the academic year of 2021-22. Now, another very significant point with respect to this concept of credit-based study is that this will allow multiple exits and entry for different courses, or even through the earned credits, students can then pursue different courses in different departments of a university or even in different universities. So the question arises as to how is this credit-based system different from the present structure. Now here the first point to be noted is that the duration of the course is not fixed, as we saw in the earlier concept of the piped education system, where for example a BTech program has been scheduled for 4 years or a BA LLB degree has been scheduled for 5 years. So the first difference here is that the duration of the course is not fixed, and this will rather depend on the interest of the student and also on the credits earned by the student while pursuing their courses. For example, suppose if a student entered into a BTech program, but after 1 year of their study, they become disenchanted or they are dissatisfied with the course, and say the student does not want to pursue BTech and want to continue his education in physics major or want to take a degree in physics major. So whatever credit he has earned in his first year of BTech program, those credits can be utilized in the physics major programs. So here he need not waste his years, and the earned credit during the first year can be utilized to study physics major or any other subjects which the students want to pursue. The next point is it allows multiple entry and exits. Now this is what we were talking about while pursuing any degree course. Say for example, if any student is pursuing BBA program and after 2 years he does not want to continue further. So after 2 years of his study, he must have earned certain credits. So taking those credits, he can also enter into any other courses as per his requirement or as per his wish. So this is where this system becomes different from our existing structure based on the concept of multiple entry and multiple exit while pursuing any degree courses. Further, this concept also allows for flexibility to the students, as we have just seen, across departments in a university or even across universities in India based on the interest and credits earned by the students. Now this new concept of education introduces a new degree known as Bachelor of Liberal Education. Now this is based on the concept of multiple entry or exit and also the concept of flexibility. Now here what might happen is that a student might end up pursuing different courses from different degree programs and end up earning credit points. But at the end, he has not pursued any particular degree program. Then in such situations, he may be given the Bachelor of Liberal Education. Now here for example, if a degree course is based on 180 credit points, and by pursuing different courses, say some from environmental studies, some from psychology, some from physics major or some from any other courses, this student has earned 180 credit points. So he may be given a Bachelor of Liberal Education. Here you must note that I am taking this 180 credit points as an example. And based on this concept of Bachelor of Liberal Education, even there would be a different admission process, not based on a particular degree program, but even for different courses in a particular semester. So fees can be charged even for a particular course which a student is pursuing based on their interest. So it says that a different admission process even for different subjects apart from admission for a regular degree courses. And the overall time which has been allocated by the system is 7 years. So suppose there may be a possibility that at a time a student does not pursue education for whatever reasons and he misses those years. So after a certain time he can come back with his earned credit points and again continue his studies. So here he need not waste his years and he can also continue his studies up to 7 years. So this is how this new credit system based education will differ from our present system of education in higher studies. So based on our understanding so far, these can be said to be certain benefits with respect to the credit based education system which has been formulated as per the National Education Policy of 2020. Now here I have summarized all the points which we have discussed so far. So basically this new credit based education system will allow students to plan their education based on their interest along with accumulated credit points. The academic bank of credit serves as an online storehouse of students' data. So the credit earned by the student will be stored in this online storehouse or this online bank. Further, these credits earned by the students across different courses will help in consolidating their academic records. Now this academic record can be utilized both for the purpose of further education or research, and even employment. And through these academic records and the credit earned, even this will help the employers to find a suitable candidate as per their requirement, as the bank will also have educational transcript based on the academic records of the students, which will provide for specific grades and performance levels of the students. And based on these educational transcript and academic records, along with his performance, specific grades, and also the credit earns, a particular employer in a specific field can pick those candidates who fit their requirements. So these can be said to be some of the benefits with respect to the credit-based education system, which has been planned as a part of National Education Policy of 2020. So, summing up of our discussion, we can say that the Academic Bank of Credit will provide for various services such as credit verification, credit accumulation, credit transfer or redemption for any students, and also degree authentication. So these can be said to be the functions of Academic Bank of Credit as proposed under the National Education Policy of 2020. Now today the Prime Minister will announce certain other measures pertaining to the Academic Bank of Credit. So let's wait for those measures to be announced by the Prime Minister of India. So this topic of credit-based higher education becomes important both from a mains and prelims perspective. In the mains, question can be asked especially from the perspective of education and human resources under GS paper 2, from the perspective of social justice, and in the prelims, questions can be asked either as a part of policy initiatives or welfare program for the students. So in this regard, this topic of Academic Bank of Credit and credit-based higher education becomes very important as it pursues a paradigm shift in the structure of higher education as it is being pursued presently. So with this understanding of this topic, let's take up our next discussion. Now the next news to be discussed appears on page number 12. It says Rajasthani puppets learn Mozart. Now in this analysis, you need to know about the different kinds of puppetry which is practiced in India. And there are four main types of puppetries in India. One is string based, the other is shadow based, the third is rod based puppetry, and the fourth is glove based puppetry. And these string based, shadow based, rod based and glove based puppetry are practiced in different regions of the country. And these different kind of puppetries is further subdivided into different parts. For example, the kind of string puppetry includes Katputli, Kundehi, Bomalattam and Gombayatta. Similarly, shadow based puppetry practiced in India includes Togalu Gombayatta, Tholu Bomalatta, Ravanchaya and Tholpava Kutu. Rod-based puppetry includes Yampuri and Putul Nach, and glove-based puppetry includes Pavakutu. So let us understand these different kinds of puppetry through this particular map. Now let's go through the special features of string-based puppetry, namely that of Katputli, Kundehi, Bomalattam and also Gombayatta. Now regarding Katputli, these kind of puppetry is covered in traditional Rajasthani dresses and it is also based on folk tales, and Katputli is mostly practiced in Rajasthan. Now regarding Kundehi, it is made of light wood and dressed in long skirts, and these puppetries have more joints, giving them more flexibility in their performance. Now Kundehi is mostly practiced in Odisha. Coming to Bomalattam, this is mostly practiced in Tamil Nadu, and it is a combination of rod and string. And Bomalattam can be said to be the largest and heaviest puppets found in India. And the last kind of string puppetry is the Gombayatta practiced in Karnataka. Now here more than one puppeteer manipulates the puppets, and this is styled on various characters of Yakshagana theatres. So these are the four kinds of string based puppetry in India, namely Katputli, Kundehi, Bomalattam and Gombayatta. Now next let's come to the shadow based puppetry. These includes Togalu Gombayatta, Tholu Bomalatta, Ravanchaya and Tholpava Kutu. Now, the shadow-based puppetry, namely that of Togalu Gombayatta, is based on the social status, and this social status is also reflected through the size of puppets, as there are larger puppets for kings and religious figures and smaller puppets for the common people. So this reflection in the puppetry also reflects the social status. And Togalu Gombayatta is mostly practiced in Karnataka. The Tholu Bomalatta, which is practiced mostly in Andhra Pradesh, is themed around mythological and devotional tales of epics and Purans. and the puppets are larger in size and covered on both sides. Now, Ravan Chaya is practiced mostly in Odisha, and there are absence of joints in the puppets, and the puppet is made up of deer skin in Ravan Chaya. Further, Thol Pavakuthu is practiced in Kerala. Here again the puppet is made of deer skin, and the basic text used is Kamba Ramayana. Now, the third kind of puppetry practiced in India is rod based, and it includes Yampuri puppetry and Putul Nach. Now, Yampuri puppetry is practiced in Bihar, and it is made of wood, and there are also absence of joints. Now, Putul Nach is mostly practiced in Bihar, Orissa, and the Assam region. And in this puppetry, there are 3 joints, namely at the neck and around the shoulders. And the puppets are dressed like the characters of Jatra, based on religious symbolism. And the fourth kind of puppetry is the glove-based puppetry. And this glove-based puppetry is practiced in Kerala, known as Pavakuthu. Now here the puppets are decorated with colorful headgears, feathers, and also face paints. And this is also influenced by Kathakali, and this is themed around Mahabharata and Ramayana. So these are the different types of puppetry which is practiced in India. Now questions can be asked in your prelims examination, especially on the types of puppetry practiced in India in different regions. So this particular topic becomes important primarily from your prelims perspective under the topic of history and culture, and even questions can be asked in your mains regarding the different kinds of puppetry practiced in India under GS paper 1. So after understanding the different kinds of puppetry which is practiced in India, let's take up our last article. Now the last news to be taken up appears on page number 14. It says deposits up to rupees 5 lakh in ailing banks to be repaid in 90 days. Cabinet approves deposit insurance law amendments on lenders in moratorium. So the cabinet has approved this Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation Amendment Bill of 2021 with an aim to benefit the depositors. Let's understand how. Suppose if the financial positions of the bank have become weak and they are placed under moratorium as per the directions or recommendations of Reserve Bank of India, then in such situations, 2 things might happen. There might be certain restriction on withdrawal, as was observed in the case of Lakshmi Vilas Bank and also in Yes Bank, or depositors might have to wait either for the liquidation process to complete or when the bank is placed out of the moratorium. So in such situation, the depositors are at a loss. Now the Reserve Bank of India, as per the Banking Regulation Act under section 45, can make application before the central government with respect to placing a bank under moratorium. And then the central government, as per the recommendation or application made by RBI, places a bank under moratorium. Now to place a bank under moratorium, different aspects can be considered. For example, the weakening financial position of the bank, rising or increasing non-performing assets of the bank, and also cases of mismanagement in the banks. Now once a bank is placed under the moratorium as per the recommendation of RBI, then withdrawal of money by the depositors becomes restricted, as what was witnessed in Lakshmi Vilas Bank and Yes Bank. And initially, depositors were allowed to withdraw only up to rupees 50,000 from both these banks. So when a bank is placed under moratorium, then it puts the depositors' money at risk because there is a chance for the bank to default. So considering this aspect of depositors' money at risk, the Union Budget of 2021-22 increased the deposit insurance coverage from rupees 1 lakh to rupees 5 lakh. And this was done to ensure that the depositors could withdraw up to rupees 5 lakh from their account, especially when the bank was placed under moratorium. However, no time limit was provided as to till when can a depositor withdraw up to rupees 5 lakh from their accounts, especially when a bank was placed under moratorium. And because of this lacuna, the new amendment enables the depositors to withdraw up to rupees 5 lakhs within 90 days or within 3 months upon placing of a bank under moratorium as per the directions of Reserve Bank of India. So now the question becomes as to what are the kind of banks on which this amendment applies, and second is the kind of accounts in which the depositors can withdraw money up to rupees 5 lakh within 90 days. So considering the type or coverage of banks with respect to this amendment applies on commercial banks, regional rural banks, local area banks, payment banks, small finance banks and cooperative banks. So these are the different type of banks on which this amendment applies. And the kind of deposits covered under the amendment includes savings account, fixed account, current account and recurring deposits account. However, the deposits not covered as per the amendment includes deposits of central government or state governments and interbank deposits. So these become some of the key highlights from your prelims perspective. Now another thing which you must know is regarding the insurance of banks deposit. So it says that currently the Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation, which is owned by RBI, provide for this insurance coverage of rupees 5 lakh per depositor for deposits in case of failure of banks or in case a bank is placed under moratorium. Now suppose Mr. A has 8 lakh rupees in his account and the bank has been placed under moratorium. Now because of rising NPAs and also weakening financial position of the bank is placed under moratorium. So here Mr. A can withdraw only up to rupees 5 lakh within 90 days. And the rest amount cannot be claimed by Mr. A as per the new amendment bill, which earlier was only rupees 1 lakh. So effectively the government has increased this amount which a depositor can withdraw in case a bank has been placed under moratorium. And this money is provided by Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation, which is owned by RBI. So it says that in case of a bank failure, depositors can get back a maximum of rupees 5 lakh per account even if their deposits may far exceeds rupees 5 lakh. So questions in your prelims can be asked under the topic of Indian economy and also under GS paper 3 in your mains examination. Hence this news becomes important primarily from your prelims perspective, from the perspective of Indian economy. With this, let's take up our question for the day. Now based on our discussion, this becomes your practice question for the day. It says, consider the following statements. First, Kathputli is a string-based puppetry practiced in the state of Rajasthan. Putul Nach is a shadow-based puppetry practiced mainly in Karnataka and Kerala. So the question is, which of the statements given above are correct? Options are A, 1 only, B, 2 only, C, both 1 and 2, D, neither 1 nor 2. Now coming to the answer of yesterday, the question was, consider the following with respect to Indus Valley site of Dholavira. First, Dholavira had a well-established water management system. Yes, this is correct. Second, the walls at the site are made of sandstone unlike other IVC sites. Yes, this is also correct. And third, Dholavira is the only IVC site from India in UNESCO's World Heritage Site list. Yes, this statement is also correct. So here the question was, which of the statements given above are correct? So here the correct answer becomes D, that is 1, 2 and 3. So with this, we come to an end to today's analysis. Thank you for watching DNS.